Hi, I'm Adam Zonder, the production manager for the Hangar Theater Company, and welcome to an episode of In Good Spirits. As we have gone virtual for the 2020 summer season and everyone is working from home, I am currently sitting in an empty theater, which is weird considering it is the summertime. However, between the ongoing pandemic and this being my 25th season with the Hangar, we thought having some conversations with the various designers and technicians with whom I have worked over the years would be fun and in good spirits. I need to take a moment to give a big thank you to our series sponsor, Myer Farm Distillers, located in Ovid, New York. Joe and his team produce various award-winning vodkas, gins, and my personal favorite, bourbons. Please check them out at meyerfarmdistillers.com. Today, I'm having a conversation with dear friend, lighting designer, and Ithaca native, Matt Richards.
Hi there.
How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. People may not actually know that you grew up in Ithaca, but do you know when you first started coming to the Hangar?
I started coming to the Hangar probably in 1987, I would guess. I mean, I might have seen plays once or twice before that, but that's when I guess I really started to kind of come to the theater and actually coming indoors. I used to drive past the Hangar Theater all the time on my way up to swimming lessons and sailing lessons. And I remember being totally fascinated by this cinder block building with no windows and these posters about, plays. And it just seemed, I couldn't imagine what was going on in there. And at that point, my parents, I don't think were really big theater goers, but Diane Okama was a friend of ours. And I think that she may have been kind of our introduction to the Hangar. I remember very clearly seeing Gypsy, which was probably 86, 80, 85. But then I really started getting interested in theater when I was on, lighting crew in middle school, and my mother really was on my case to do something with my summers. And I'd sort of finished sailing lessons and swimming lessons, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just see what's going on at the Hangar Theater. And I came down to the sort of kickoff summer picnic, and Bob Moss was there, and Michael Crass, and they sort of introduced me around, and I met Graham McDonald, who is the electrician, I think for one of the Lincoln Center spaces. I'm not sure which.
Great.
But then I just sort of interning and almost never left. I did go away for about 4 or 5 years, which I think coincides when the time that you arrived. But
yeah. So when you went off to college, which was UMass, did you go thinking you wanted to be a lighting designer?
I did think so, but I also thought it was very possible that I would end up doing something else, and so was really conscious of choosing a larger school with a lot of possibilities. I was also thinking very strongly about SUNY Purchase and a couple of smaller schools, but UMass seemed, I don't know, like they had there was definitely a lot of opportunities to do theater, and it was large enough that my parents felt comfortable sending me off there to get a a BA rather than a BFA. But I fell in love and really have not looked back.
That's great. So what is it about lighting design that you really enjoy, and how do you get excited about a show?
Lighting, I think in a lot of ways it's the most mysterious to everyone. We all are very familiar with sound and scenery and clothing. All of the other kind of design elements is something that we kind of interact with in our daily lives. But lighting somehow is just sort of what breathes life into everything else. It's not a lot of content. You don't get a lot of storytelling from the light. It's much more about organizing and clarifying everyone else's work in a lot of ways. It's a little bit like editing, in that you kind of figure out, it helps kind of glue scenes together. It helps you get from one scene to another. But I just love sort of the mystery of it and the way it just kind of affects you emotionally and viscerally and kind of sneaks up on you. You don't quite realize it's happening when it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Is there anything that you think people might be surprised to learn about lighting design?
Let's see. There is, what is surprising? And there's so many things that are surprising. And there's a lot of mathematics. There's a lot of physics, which might be surprising or not. I don't know. Sometimes, it feels like it's, just picking colors, gel colors, plastic sheets to change the color of the light. But there's definitely a lot of geometry involved, and let's see, it's the element that really only happens at the very end. There's really no way to start working on the actual design itself until you're in the theater with all the other elements, because it's about showcasing and highlighting the other items, the other design elements and the actors. So there's a little bit of prep work, but it is a mad dash in the last 3 days when you're at the Hangar of tech, and it's a lot of kind of hoping and educated guessing about what is going to work. But as often happens in the last couple of days of tech, lots of things change. There are a lot of surprises, and so lighting, really has to be able to adapt in the moment, and it's very, it's kind of perfect for a procrastinator like me. I really, I'm much more excited to go in and just jump in and fix it rather than kind of plan it all out.
Great. So the first season that you returned as a main stage lighting designer was 1997, where you did the designs for Crucible, Picasso de la Panagile, and the Rose Tattoo.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any recollections of any of those shows?
I definitely do. I think I remember them all. I remember, truthfully, I remember struggling with Crucible. I loved Beowulf's design, and it was really the first time. I'd watched people design in a theater with 3 sides, but I really had never done it myself. And I remember really just trying to figure out how to do it. And Picasso and La Panagile, I remember very clearly. Ron Bashford, who directed it, is still a dear friend of mine. He's teaching at Amherst College, and I remember just being incredibly moved by the sound design in that. I can't remember who the composer is now, but it was Ron Cho's early 20th century Stravinsky piece, and it just was blown away by it. And that, I remember that being kind of what kind of brought me into giving the idea for what I wanted that to be. And I remember also struggling with we wanted all these light bulbs all over the space, and I remember that was a major challenge for you and Bill Hahn, but I remember it being so beautiful and exactly how I wanted that play to end. So
yeah, we were able to do the light bulbs. We weren't able to make them raise and lower.
That's right. And in truth, that's the other thing. You realize, again, that's a perfect example of kind of adapting the moment, figuring out what you absolutely need, and just, I think we thought that we needed to watch the light bulbs descend, but they were clear light bulbs, and just having them in the space, they sort of disappeared. And so you didn't realize they were there. It was so magical just to simply watch them turn on. And, you know, that's exactly the kind of, you know, lessons that, you know, you really need to think about and realize, especially as a lighting designer, but as, you know, all theater technicians, is to, you know, really think about what is the essential, what you can let go of and achieve the moment, and what is superfluous. Because a lot of times your initial idea, there's a lot of stuff that is not the essential, you know, the essential element. So I remember that was beautiful.
Great. Since that first year, you've returned every year since, with shows ranging from smaller dramas like Doubt and Old Wicked Songs to some of the biggest shows we've ever done, like Rent, Gypsy, Kinky Boots. How does your approach differ from a small show to a large show?
Let's see. A larger show. I mean, I think what the big change is often, it's my kind of, I guess my role in it is different. That in a small show, I often find myself able to kind of be more integrally involved in being like an outside eye and the specifics of all of the aspects of the design, which I love. Like I really love collaborating with directors and designers and solving moments that with light, or sometimes even without light, just as an idea that comes to me to help solve a moment. And you can do that with the smaller play where the lighting isn't constantly moving, and I'm just less busy. In a huge musical, especially in the Hangar schedule, which is, you know, basically three days, there's just no time. The only thing I really have time to worry about is just trying to get through all of the lighting cues and just making it. But I find them both really energizing. There's something, the adrenaline rush of trying to, you know, finish lighting a song when you only have, you know, 15 minutes to light the entire song, where, you know, when they did it on Broadway, they had 3 days to do that. It is exciting, you know. It's really, and again, you get to learn to just focus on what is essential, and and in a way, you then end up getting closer to the story and figuring out what the story is, and you end up letting kind of the bells and whistles sometimes fall away. And then, you know, whenever you have time, you add the little flashes of light and color and the bells and whistles. But it's fundamentally about storytelling as quickly as possible and responding to what everyone else is doing. So it's really,
You know, one of the things that have always been that I've always enjoyed when we are sitting in design meetings is how much of a dramaturgical approach you often take to shows.
yeah.
Is that something that you were always interested in, or did that develop later? Because it's not, I've not found it as typical with lighting designers.
Yeah. You know, so here's the moment I decided I wanted to be a lighting designer was actually a story about set design that the first year that I was interning at the Hangar, the master electrician, they were doing a production of All My Sons, and I think I don't know if I had any role in the show itself on the crew or anything, but I definitely helped hang the lights, and the set was real grass downstage, and then you know, a door, but the house got more and more abstract into this abstract sort of skyscape. And the master electrician explained to me that the idea behind the set was that the set design was that all of the real problems of the household are dealt with out on the lawn. and that every time the father couldn't face the reality of what was happening, he would run to his imaginary world inside his house. And I was blown away that there was this storytelling idea about the visual picture. I had always thought it was, just decorative and functional, that you wanted to be able to say it was nighttime or daytime, or, but that it actually, as part of the story, was fascinating. And I just was electrified by it and knew that I wanted to do that. And so that's always been kind of my focus. And I love telling stories. That's what we do. And as I said, you can't, because the light doesn't happen until the end. So kind of my role in the beginning, as I see it, is to shape the play that we're about to make together as the designers and director into the best expression of that story that we can come up with and most interesting. And so I do love, especially, to be involved in scenery, because it's most directly related to the light. There's really, in a way, the scenery dictates what the world of the light is going to be. You really can't, the light on its own isn't going to kind of express any real, ideas, unless the scenery is doing the same thing. And if you work together, it becomes this beautiful, cohesive whole. And so, I do love that part. It's always a little bit awkward because, the set designer and the costume designer and even the sound designer in some cases will come to the first design meetings, with drawings and plans and models and sketches. And I always have nothing to provide except for a couple of bombs to explode all the things they, want it to be. And, I do enjoy kind of, just disrupting the train of thought, just to make sure we've thought everything through, and not to get comfortable with, our initial choices. So
Great.
And also, I will say that I also, hope that in the flip side is true, that when I'm in the hot seat in the last 3 days of tech, and the scenery is basically done and the costumes are done, that the costume designers and the set designers will come to me and drop a couple bombs also, and try and make me think differently about my work. So
great. It's always fun when that happens.
Yeah.
So do you have a preference for musical versus non-musical in design?
I don't really. I honestly, I guess, I end up doing probably, I don't know. I used to do a lot more straight, just plays, but I would say I'm most excited and interested in doing really old plays, or really brand new plays, where with an old play, often they need to be kind of shaken up and reimagined.
Old, like Shakespeare, or
like Shakespeare, but also, old, like, a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, or I guess I mean, doing something like Kinky Boots is thrilling and fun, or In the Heights. But in a lot of ways, they're contemporary and new enough that oftentimes what people are saying, what has been said about them, is still the most relevant and best way to go. So there's a lot less kind of reimagining of whatever the play was, or musical that was in New York last year. So that's what I would say. But at the same time, there's also things that are just it's wonderful. I mean, I think about Kinky Boots and In the Heights probably more than other plays that I've done at the Hangar, just because sitting in the theater with a full audience of people just loving the production is incredibly inspiring and moving. So it's all a balance.
Great. Are there any other Hangar shows you've designed that stick out to you? Since you've done over 50 of them?
No, is that possible? Wow, that's insane. Let's see, what sticks out to me? Sound of Music sticks out. Sound of Music is, and I think about that especially today, that, and when that was probably 2001.
2002.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, and having a Black man cast as Captain Von Trapp was revolutionary, really, for the community and really theater in general. I mean, it definitely happened, but I remember just being surprised myself, and then really moved at kind of learning how little that mattered to the storytelling. There was always this question, I guess, before was, well, is it going to be weird that the father is Black and the children are white, or or some of them are white, and it was so liberating and wonderful to work to realize for myself and to watch the audience realize along the way that it meant nothing. It had nothing to do with anything. And now you see that all over the place. I mean, that's, it's Hamilton, but having that on stage at the Hangar 18 years ago, it's a really big deal. And it's about, and it was important that it was in my hometown. And that's the other part about the Hangar that is important, is that it is where I'm from and hyper local, and I know the community, and that, I think that is going to be really important looking towards the future. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of re-examining and re-emphasis on community and what's local.
Great. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I've actually told that story about Captain Von Trapp a few times.
Have you?
Especially recently, yeah.
Yeah. It was really, I don't know if was it a surprise to you at the time? Do you remember how you felt about it? I mean,
no, I do remember when we were in, I think it was the meet and greet for that show, and the actor was talking about how his agent didn't want him to do the role based on the Hangar's pay scale. And he told the agent, no, and he said, when else am I ever going to get a chance to play Captain Von Trapp? And he was fantastic in it.
He was fantastic. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's a great show to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
So obviously a huge part of lighting is the technology behind it. And, since I've started the Hangar in the last 25 years, technology has evolved dramatically in that time. Is it difficult to keep up with it all as a lighting designer?
Yes, it's impossible. It's totally impossible. I mean, that's why I have assistants. I mean, that's really, I end up using them because they're way more up on what's current and what's new than I am. And it just changes all the time. And so mean, the more you do, the more you're familiar with stuff. But I'm a little bit of a technophobe in general. Like I honestly, again, I'm more interested in the storytelling and the idea, and how to achieve it is less. I don't know, is less what I'm interested in. I know I have to achieve it, I have to find a solution, but I'm much more interested in what the idea is and what the image is, and then we'll figure out how to do it. But I do rely a lot on assistance for that. Yeah, so I don't know. It's I'm honestly perfectly happy to just use a couple of old lights from the 70s and see what we can do.
Do you find it's difficult to balance the fact that we have all this technology and that does not come out overwhelming the story?
That is a good. Yes, I absolutely do, and I think it's one of the reasons I am sort of wary, or maybe it's how I justify being a technophobe. But I do think that it's very easy to get seduced by kind of the latest technology. I mean, I think an example of that is LED tape, which is everywhere in the theater. And I mean, I don't know if people don't know what it is. It's just a very tiny. It's probably 3/8 of an inch wide and an eighth of an inch high, and it's in spools and has tiny little LED diodes on it, and puts out an incredible amount of light. And you can hide it places. You can put it places you would never be able to put light. And so everybody does. They just try and figure out kind of the most surprising place to put it, and it ends up kind of meaning nothing in the end. And that said, I mean, I use it all the time, but you do have to be careful and think about, why are you using it? What is the idea? What are you trying to achieve? Rather than, knowing that you have that tool and figuring out where to insert that tool. So, yeah, and I don't think, I think you can do it both ways. I mean, there are plenty of, because ultimately all of the solutions to my ideas require technology, and so there's definitely I respect people that do spend the time keeping up on what's new, but it's just not my thing.
Got it. I understand that. And outside of the Hangar, you have designed at various regional theaters around the country, and you've also designed one Broadway show, the one-woman show Anne with Holland Taylor.
Yes.
How did that come about?
That came about through a Hangar connection.
Really?
It did. Yeah. Michael Fagan, who was a set designer who went to Ithaca College, and I did a couple of plays.
Michael designed As Bees and Honey Drown here.
Bees and Honey Drown, yes, exactly. I think he didn't have a great time on that, but I had a great time on that, and we had a great time together. We share an agent, and Michael Fagan had still does I think design television projects, and so I think through that gotten hooked up with Holland Taylor, and they were looking for a lighting designer, and Michael doesn't do a lot of theater, so I think he went to our agent, and sort of went through the list of lighting designers, and he remembered me, and so
Great.
that's how it happened. Yeah. And it was just so unexpected. I mean, it's one of those projects that we spent so many different tour stops, or not even tour stops, but just kind of building and figuring out what the play was in these tiny little theaters in Texas, and it just didn't seem like it was really going to go to New York ever, which was fine. It seemed like it was for Texas, and people loved it there, and then kind of out of the blue, it came to New York. So but it's so many things go back to the Hangar Theater.
That's great. So, how, what was the process like designing that show in New York?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is fast and furious in a different way. I mean, it is. There is almost no time to kind of rethink what you're doing. The big commercial projects I've done, it's really about kind of figuring it out, in Texas, and then moving into New York and executing the plan. And when we took Anne to New York, though, the big surprise was that we went to Lincoln Center rather than one of the more traditional proscenium theaters in theater districts. So we ended up having to reimagine the space, because we were in this enormous thrust space that's actually not really unlike the Hangar in a lot of ways. It's just 3 times as big. But the same rules apply. And so I remember being really glad that we had the opportunity to rethink it, and Michael Fagan kind of had this idea that to use the entire depth of the theater, and so that the set kind of started all the way upstage and rolled downstage, and it was definitely the most beautiful that show's ever been, and I think that's not often. It's not true. That's not often, but it's easy for that not to happen. I think a lot of times shows that are on their way to Broadway look best before they get to New York. That getting the show up in New York is always can be a frustrating series of compromises, and you always expect you're going to have lots of money and lots of time to fix everything, and it's actually the complete opposite that's true. Yeah, so I'm very fast and furious, and it's not maybe my favorite, because I do love just having the time and the opportunity to make mistakes and figure stuff out, and I think that's why I prefer smaller regional theaters for exactly that reason.
Great. A little more art and a little less commercial.
Yeah. I mean, that said, I was about to, in fact, this week I was supposed to start work on a pre-Broadway musical in New York City. So I still do it. I would still happily, I'd be happy to do it again. But it's, I would say my heart is much lies with the more local, smaller, more intimate projects. I think I do fundamentally believe in, a group of people coming together as a community in whatever way that means, but and experiencing theater that way. And I feel like that often works best when it is a hyper local, a smaller audience, so smaller theaters. I just sort of felt that intimacy more clearly with the small theater.
Great. So, based on the current state of the world and the pandemic, do you have an opinion about where theater might be heading in the future?
I mean, I do think local. I really do. I think that that's going to be a necessity in a lot of ways, but I think a benefit. And I think that re-examining, what we have as a community and using resources locally is going to be important and is going to be really exciting. I really think that it's sort of hard to imagine what's going to happen in New York. It will all come back. It will certainly come back, but I don't think it's going to come back before there's the vaccine and this is, behind us. I just don't know that it can be, a money-making venture until then. But people are desperate to reconnect, and theater is a great way to do that. And so I do think where it's going to be successful and most important is in places like the Hangar and regional theaters. I'm certainly worried that a lot of them are not going to make it. I mean, I do think that it's going to look very different for everyone. I think we don't know what's going to survive, what's not going to survive. I mean, just look at the list of, it's different, but look at the list of restaurants that are closing, never to reopen. And I think that, we're just not there yet with theaters. I think something similar is going to happen. But I do remain incredibly hopeful. I think it's an opportunity to really re-examine what's important and how we make theater and who the theater we're making is for and who's making it. I think it's the same questions that we're all asking ourselves as a country and a society are being asked in the theaters. And I think that I know that is ultimately to the benefit. So it's they're certainly dark times now, but I remain more hopeful. Dark times in many ways, but I remain hopeful, totally hopeful and confident about the future.
Great. I am in agreement with you on that one. Thank you very much, Matt. I'd like to once again thank our sponsor, Meyer Farm Distillers. Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Adam. So great to see you.